You finally get a free afternoon. No meetings, no errands, nothing due. You sit down to rest. And within minutes, a voice in your head starts listing everything you should be doing instead. You feel it in your chest before you even name it. Guilt. Not because anything is wrong, just because you stopped moving. Why does doing nothing feel like doing something wrong? The answer isn't about laziness. It isn't about discipline either. It's about a survival system that is still running inside you, thousands of years after the world it was built for disappeared. Your brain doesn't punish you for resting because rest is dangerous. It punishes you because, for most of human history, rest used to mean something very specific. And your body never got the memo that things changed. Start with a simple, uncomfortable fact. Humans evolved in environments of scarcity. Food wasn't guaranteed. Shelter wasn't guaranteed. Safety wasn't guaranteed. In that world, stillness carried a cost. If you weren't foraging, hunting, building, or watching for threats, you weren't gathering the resources that kept you alive. Energy left idle was energy that could have been used to survive one more day. So your ancestors' brains developed a quiet, persistent nudge, a discomfort with stopping, not because stopping was inherently bad, but because in a world of scarcity, unproductive stillness was a luxury few could afford. That discomfort didn't disappear when scarcity did, it just changed clothes. Here's where it gets stranger. You might assume that early humans were in a constant state of motion, working non-stop just to survive. That's not what the evidence shows. In 2012, anthropologist Herman Pontzer began studying the Hadza, a hunter-gatherer community in Tanzania, whose lifestyle closely resembles that of early humans. Using doubly labeled water to measure total energy expenditure, Pontzer found something unexpected. Despite walking for miles a day and doing physically demanding work, the Hadza burned roughly the same total calories as sedentary adults in industrialized countries. Their bodies weren't working harder overall. They were working smarter and resting deliberately, in between bursts of effort. So the ancestors your body is still wired for weren't grinding endlessly. They were resting constantly, in short, unashamed bursts, because their bodies needed to conserve energy for when it truly mattered. Rest itself was never the enemy. What changed is what rest means to your brain now. Think about your daily rhythm for a second. When do you actually feel comfortable stopping? Probably after you've checked something off a list, sent the email, finished the task, hit the goal. That's not a coincidence. Somewhere along the way, rest stopped being a biological need and started being a reward you have to earn. This shift didn't happen because of evolution alone. It happened because of culture. Specifically, the culture that emerged with industrialization, when human worth started being measured in output. Sociologists have long pointed to the rise of factory labor in the 19th century as the moment when time itself became something to be used efficiently, not simply lived. Before that, work followed the sun, the seasons, the needs of the body. After that, work followed the clock. And once time became something you were supposed to optimize, stillness started to feel like waste. Your brain absorbed that message. Not through biology this time, but through repetition. Every time you were praised for staying busy, every time you saw someone else's exhaustion treated as proof of their value, every time rest got framed as something you had to justify. Layer by layer, a cultural rule got fused onto an ancient survival instinct. The old instinct said, stillness might mean danger. The new rule said, stillness might mean you're not enough. Together, they created something powerful, a guilt reflex that fires the moment you slow down, even when nothing is actually at stake. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. This discomfort with stillness isn't just cultural pressure, it's also a documented psychological pattern. In 2014, psychologist Timothy Wilson and his colleagues at the University of Virginia ran a now famous set of experiments. They asked participants to simply sit alone in a room with their thoughts for about 15 minutes. No phone, no distractions, just stillness. Many participants reported the experience as unpleasant. In one striking version of the study, some participants were given the option to administer themselves a mild electric shock during that quiet time. A significant number chose to shock themselves rather than sit with nothing to do. Not because the shock felt good, because unstructured stillness felt worse. What does that tell you? It tells you that an unoccupied mind isn't neutral for most people. It's uncomfortable enough that some would rather feel physical pain than sit with it. That discomfort is the same ancient alarm dressed up in a modern setting. Your brain isn't built to sit in open, unstructured time without flagging it as something to fix. There's a neurological piece to this too. When you stop actively engaging in a task, your brain doesn't go quiet. It shifts into what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a system that activates during rest and mind wandering. Researchers like Mark Berman at the University of Michigan have studied how this network relates to attention and mental fatigue, showing that unstructured mental time isn't wasted time. It's when your brain processes memories, solves lingering problems, and restores your capacity to focus. But here's the twist. Because this network operates quietly, without a visible output, it doesn't feel productive. And if it doesn't feel productive, the guilt reflex assumes something is wrong. So you end up in a strange trap. Your brain needs unstructured rest to function well, but your instincts, shaped by both ancient scarcity and modern culture, interpret that same rest as a warning sign. The very thing keeping you sharp gets mistaken for the thing making you fall behind. Notice how this shows up in small, everyday moments. You lie down for a nap and immediately calculate how much time you're losing. You watch a show and feel the itch to also be doing something else. You take a walk with no destination and your mind starts drafting a to-do list anyway. None of that is a personal failure. It's an old alarm system misfiring in a world it was never designed for. Ask yourself something. When was the last time you rested without needing to justify it? Not resting to recover for more work. Not resting as a scheduled break between tasks. Just resting because you're a living thing that needs it. The same way you need water or sleep. If that feels hard to picture, that's the guilt reflex talking. Not a moral failing, a signal misapplied. Consider how this plays out across a single, ordinary week. Monday, you push through fatigue because stopping feels like weakness. Wednesday, you skip lunch to keep momentum, telling yourself you'll rest once things calm down. Friday arrives, and instead of relief, you feel oddly unsettled by the empty hours ahead. By Sunday night, you're already bracing for Monday, as if rest were a debt quietly accumulating interest. Notice the pattern. Rest never actually arrives. It keeps getting pushed to a future moment that never quite comes. Because the moment it does arrive, the guilt reflex reclassifies it as wasted time instead of needed time. This isn't unique to any one personality type. It shows up in students who can't watch a movie without also studying. It shows up in parents who feel selfish taking 10 quiet minutes for themselves. It shows up in retirees who spent decades linking their identity to productivity, then feel lost when the tasks disappear and the stillness remains. The guilt reflex doesn't care about your circumstances. It only cares whether you're visibly producing something. And when you're not, it fills the silence with a familiar, nagging question. Shouldn't you be doing something right now? It helps to understand why that question feels so urgent, even when logically you know better. Psychologists describe this as a mismatch between evolved threat detection and modern reality. Your brain's alarm systems were calibrated for immediate physical dangers. A rustle in the grass, a stranger at the edge of camp, a dwindling food supply before winter. Those threats demanded action, and stillness in the face of them could be fatal. But your brain doesn't distinguish well between an ancient physical threat and a modern abstract one, like falling behind at work or disappointing someone's expectations. The nervous system fires the same general alarm either way. Restlessness, discomfort, a pull toward motion, any motion, just to make the feeling stop. That's part of why busyness can feel oddly soothing, even when it's exhausting. Motion quiets the alarm, at least temporarily. Stillness leaves it ringing, uninterrupted, with nothing to distract you from it. So you reach for another task, not necessarily because the task matters, but because doing something, anything, feels safer than doing nothing. There's a modern mirror to all of this that's easy to miss. Look at how rest gets marketed back to you today. Vacations get framed as something you earn. Sleep gets tracked and scored like a performance metric. Even relaxation apps sell you optimized breathing, timed meditations, structured downtime, because unstructured stillness still feels too uncomfortable to sell as it is. Somewhere, the culture figured out that people won't rest unless resting looks like another task to complete. That's not an accident. That's the same ancient wiring being used against you, dressed up as self-care. Is there a way out of this loop, or are you simply stuck reacting to an alarm that no longer applies? The research suggests something hopeful. Alarm systems, even ancient ones, can be recalibrated. Mark Berman's work on attention restoration found that even short exposures to unstructured, low-stimulation time measurably improved participants' ability to focus afterward. The brain wasn't malfunctioning during that quiet time, it was doing exactly what it needed to do, quietly repairing itself in the background. The problem was never the rest itself. The problem was the meaning your mind assigned to it. That distinction matters more than it might seem. If rest is dangerous, avoiding it makes sense. But if rest is simply unfamiliar, then avoiding it isn't protecting you from anything. It's just familiar discomfort standing in for real risk. And discomfort you can learn to sit with is very different from danger you need to escape. There's also a quieter irony here worth noticing. The more your worth gets tied to constant output, the less capacity you actually have for meaningful output. Chronic busyness without rest degrades memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and long-term focus, the exact resources that make good work possible in the first place. In trying to outrun the guilt reflex by staying endlessly productive, you slowly undermine the very productivity you're chasing. The alarm, in other words, isn't just outdated, it's actively working against the goals it claims to protect. But here's the reframe worth sitting with. The Hadza didn't need permission to rest. They didn't track it, optimize it, or feel guilty about it. Rest was simply part of the rhythm of staying alive, not a reward for surviving hard enough. Your body still remembers that rhythm, buried under decades of cultural noise telling you otherwise. The guilt you feel when you slow down isn't evidence that you're falling behind. It's an alarm built for a world where stillness once meant risk, misfiring in a world where stillness is exactly what keeps you functioning. Your ancestors rested constantly, in short, honest bursts, without shame, because their bodies knew something yours has forgotten. Rest was never something to earn, it was simply something to trust. So tonight, when you finally sit down, and that familiar voice starts listing everything you should be doing instead, pause for a second. Ask yourself who that voice is actually protecting you from. There's no famine outside your door, no predator in the grass, just an old alarm, still ringing, long after the danger it was built for disappeared. Maybe the real answer to why you can't rest was never about willpower at all. Maybe it was about finally recognizing the alarm for what it is, and choosing, quietly, to trust the stillness anyway.